We're going to explore an ancient mystery. Where did we get this technology from? Where did we get these amazing capabilities that belong to no other form of life? Only you can harmonize two organs in your body, your heart and your brain, to become a single potent system, and then apply that in all the ways that we described in the first module. Where did we get that capability from? We're going to answer that in this module. There's an American author, his name is Scott Turow, and he asked a really important question. He says, who are we? But the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves and believe. I want you to think about that. We tell ourselves all kinds of stories. What stories do we believe? And what do they mean to us in our lives? The reason this is important is because our story matters. Your story matters. The way you think of yourself. First of all, where's your story even come from? From the time you're born, you are surrounded by individuals, you're surrounded by family, by friends, by society, feeding you the information that tells you how to think of yourself. Now, I want you to think about that. Think about all the things that your family has told you about what's possible and what's not possible in your life. What do your friends tell you is possible, not possible? What does your religion tell you? What does your science tell you? What does society tell you? What does your culture tell you? When you begin to put all this together, you see that our story does matter. And here's the reason. Because you and I, we live our lives based upon the way we've been taught to think of ourselves. We solve our problems based on the way we've been taught to think of ourselves. We choose our relationships. This is a big one. Every friend that you have in your life, every acquaintance that you have in your life, and we're all adults here, every human that you've invited into your home, everyone that you've invited into your bed, it's based upon the way that you think about yourself, your value, your worth, your potentials in life. We heal our bodies based upon our story, and we build our society, we build our future based upon the way that we think about ourselves, based upon our story. Now, we see our story is really important. It's not just some idea that we talk about casually at Starbucks, on a Sunday afternoon, but your story plays a role every moment of every day of your life. And for that reason, I think it's worth the time to explore who we are, where our potentials have really come from. And we're going to do this in a couple of different ways. I'm going to share the best science of the modern world, and we're going to take this science a step further by crossing the traditional boundaries that have separated the sciences in the past. Here's what I mean by that. If you look at the human body only through the eyes of chemistry, all you're ever going to see is chemical elements, chemical reactions with no context. If you look at the human body only through the eyes of ancient texts and spiritual traditions, you're going to see a story about good and bad and right and wrong and angels and demons, but you're not going to see any of the science that helps us to make that possible. We now have the ability to extract DNA from the fossils of ancient forms of life. If that sounds familiar, that is what the movie Jurassic Park is based upon. The first movie, the first Jurassic Park, the really good one, where DNA was extracted from the bone marrow of ancient forms of life. Now, in the movie, they brought those forms of life alive again, and to the best of my knowledge, we haven't done that successfully. What we have done is extracted the DNA so that we can build the genome, the map, the genetic map of those ancient forms of life. And once we did that, we could compare them to our genome, our map of DNA today. And here's what scientists found. There's not enough overlap between Neanderthal, between Australopithecus and these other forms of life and us. We did not descend from Neanderthal. We actually shared the earth with Neanderthal. We walked the earth. They say that we mated. We had Neanderthal boyfriends and girlfriends. And that's why many people do have a little bit of Neanderthal DNA in their genome today. But we didn't descend from them because we shared the earth with them. Well, if we didn't descend from them, where'd we come from? What you're seeing on the screen right now, I'm highlighting this. This is actually fossilized DNA. I want you to see what it looks like coming from the bone marrow of an ancient form of life that was believed to be our ancestor. Well, here's the bottom line. I'm just going to cut to the chase. What the DNA now is telling us is that our species, we are called anatomically modern human. Okay, that's abbreviated AMH, anatomically modern human, that we appeared on Earth about 200,000 years BP before present, 200,000 years ago. And here's the kicker. We haven't changed. Our genome is the same now as it is from the fossilized remains that we pull from those ancient forms of life. That's not Darwin's idea of evolution. So now the question, where did the mysterious mutations for our humanness come from? Well, we know the answer, and scientists are having a hard time for what the answer is telling us. So let me just share this with you right now. The smoking gun for our human existence is in chromosome number 2, a very mysterious chromosome. It has about 1,200 genes. Let me tell you about just one of those, how important, just one gene called TBR1. TBR1 is responsible for everything that you see in the blue on the human brain on your screen. That is all because of one gene. It's in the part that you see in the blue where we find the aspects of our humanness that we cherish, our ability for intuition, telepathy, remote healing, remote viewing, psychokinesis, all of those things, empathy, sympathy, compassion, all originate in the part of the human brain that you see in blue. So you can see that gene TBR1 is important. Chromosome number 2 that comes from is important. Where did that come from? Here's the answer. Scientists find that this particular chromosome is the product of 2 ancient genetic strands fusing into one longer genetic strand. Here is the quote from the proceedings in the National Academy of Science. This is a direct quote. "We conclude that human chromosome 2 is the relic of an ancient telomere to telomere fusion of 2 ancestral chromosomes." Now, I know that sounds a little technical, and many of the things I'm saying to you sound technical. I want you to know that there's science behind this, and that the science is leading us to a story, a powerful new story about who we are and where we come from. So I'm giving you some of the technical information for credibility so that you can look this up for yourself. Check it out on your own. Take it deeper and further if you want to. What this technical paper is saying, if you look at the little movie I put together on the screen, there's 2 separate chromosomes. They're coming together, and there are genes that are being taken away, genes that are being added to create the fusion. This cannot happen in nature. What this means is our genome is intentional. It's not the product of random mutations of Darwin's survival of the strongest. Now, I want to be really clear about something here. I'm a degreed geologist. I'm an earth scientist, and I believe in evolution. Evolution is a fact. We see it in the fossil record. I did it, my field work. Evolution of plants, animals, and insects. The theory breaks down when it comes to us humans. Something happened 200,000 years ago, and that something gave us the humanness that we have today. It means our genome is intentional. It means our divinity and all of our capabilities are intentional. Everything we talked about in the first segment of this series, all those capabilities are intentional. So here's the question that I ask myself. as a scientist back in the 1980s, and I'm going to share with you my process, and I'm going to share with you where this has led to a surprising outcome. Is it possible that who or whatever is responsible for all the things we're talking about, for our humanness and our DNA, is it possible that that intelligence could have left a message inside of us telling us that we're the product of an intentional act? That we're not the product of some lucky biology and a random event. And if it is possible that that message would be left, where would we look? Would we look in the brain? We look in the heart? Or would we look into the DNA itself, the very building blocks of life? Well, this is what I want to talk to you about right now. Let me preface this by sharing quickly a discovery in the year 2007. Japanese scientists released a paper, kind of a mind-blowing paper, showing that information can be stored in the DNA of living organisms. So what they did was they stored information in the DNA of a bacteria, and they used a bacteria because they multiply quickly, so they could put the information in one generation, 250 generations or 1,500 generations later. They could pull that DNA out and see if the information was still there, and it was. So in 2007, the technical paper showed that DNA is a form of information storage. Now, that is a mind blower to me in terms of how we can actually store information in DNA. I'm giving you the technical information on your screen. If you want to look into it deeper, it's beyond the scope of what I'm going to do in here today. But here's the point. If we can store information in DNA today, and we are the product of an intelligent act that fused our DNA a long time ago, is it possible that who or whatever that intelligence is did the same thing with us? Did the intelligence responsible for us leave a message in our DNA? Well, let me show you, this goes even further. Now we know DNA is 1,000 times denser for storage than the flash memory drive. DNA is three-dimensional, and it's a better storage medium than the flash drive on your computer. You can write information in DNA and store it forever. And that was really caught my attention. If you can write DNA in an organism, and as long as that organism reproduces, the information is intact in that DNA, is that what happened to us? Well, if the answer was no, this would be a very short program, but the answer is yes. Together, let's you and I decode the message that was left in the DNA of every cell of our bodies. And if you've never done this before, I think you're going to be surprised at what you see. Let's begin first just by shifting our thinking a little bit about cells. We're taught that cells are sticky, gooey, wet stuff, little sacs of saline in our bodies. That's a biological perspective. What if we think about cells from an IT perspective, information technology? What if every cell in your body, is a library of information, literally? And what does a library hold? Well, a library holds books. What if the chromosomes in the cell are the books? And what's inside the books? Well, inside the books, we get paragraphs and sentences and words. What if the genes in the chromosome are the paragraphs and the sentences and the words? And if that makes sense to you, that's exactly what's happening inside of your body. 50 trillion cells in your body, you are a living library of information. How do we decode that information? This is where we've got to cross those traditional boundaries that I was talking about earlier. Now we live in an age where we're being encouraged to replace the gift of our bodies with synthetics, with technology, with AI, computer chips in the brain that mimic our cognition, chemicals in the blood, mimic our healing, RFID chips under the skin, nanobots. moving through our respiratory and our circulatory systems. What do we do with that? Well, that's a very personal choice. Everything that we did in the first module of this series is possible because a higher intelligence, God eternal within the body, gave you the gift of that body. And anything that you do to compromise that gift or to give it away to technology is a choice to deny the gift that was given to you and to me so very long ago. Now, I want you to think about this. This is an exercise in life. Do we love ourselves enough? You can ask yourself on a very personal level, do I love myself enough to honor, preserve, and protect the gift, the sacred gift that was given to me 200,000 years ago? Or will I compromise the gift of my body for the efficiency and the speed of a computer chip or of an artificial intelligence? There is no right or wrong. It's a personal choice. I want you to know what it is you're giving away if you choose to do so. And that's what I wanted to say to you in this module. So this brings a close to this section, but stay tuned because in the next module, we're going to take this one step further. We're going to go into the artificial intelligence. What is AI? What is artificial intelligence? Can it evaluate our spiritual evolution? Can it tell us about our spiritual history? How does it work to begin with? And I think you're going to be surprised at what you see.